We're here for the weekly running back preview for fantasy football going into week 12. The people were clamoring. They wanted more graphics, more templates, more headshots. Well, call me Chris fucking Kyle because you're getting them today, all right? We are breaking down every running back relevant to fantasy football into 5 categories. One of 5 categories. You are either a must start, a strong start, a dub flex, an L flex, or a sit, okay? Everybody I talk about is going to fit into one of those categories. Hopefully that helps you guys a little bit more making your decisions on these players that may or may not be in your lineups. Let's jump right in and start off with Thursday Night Football. We've got Pittsburgh traveling to Cleveland. Pittsburgh is 3.5-point favorites in this game. The total of this game is 36.5. Now, this is very noteworthy for fantasy players, okay? It actually opened up around 42.5. Then weather reports came out, which are pretty significant. One of the more significant weather reports we've had up to this point in the season. The point totals dropped they actually got down to 35.5 at one point. So 7 points we're talking about. There are winds supposed to be between 15 and 25 miles per hour. There's an 80% chance of snow. Although the weather has gotten incrementally better as it relates to football weather, as the week has progressed, this is the key factor of this game. This will be the storyline of the game. So people getting really excited about the overs of these teams, the passing yardage, whatever. This is the reason that they are being compressed, okay? This is the reason why the over-under is down at 36.5. Now, that being said, obviously sets up for a relatively strong ground game for both teams, at least from the volume standpoint. We've got Najee Harris. We've got Jaylen Warren. Now, Najee, he continues to be a staple of this offense. They're not throwing the ball to him that much. Cleveland's run defense has been relatively good up to this point in the season, but it kind of feels like we're seeing a little bit of giving up on that side of the ball. They're just not as strong as a team or a unit overall as they've been the last couple of years. So we're going to throw Najee into the strong start mix. Jaylen Warren, on the other hand, it just feels like it's the same played out narrative every single week with him, where it's like he's getting healthier, he looks better, he always looks good, but his touches are always so minimized. He very rarely ever scores touchdowns. He doesn't make that many big plays. So he's like fun, hypothetically, and he could be your favorite player. But I actually think he's an L flex, to be honest with you. I never really feel confident that he's going to put up more than like 50 to 60 yards and catch more than 2 to 3 passes here. So way that I've been looking at a lot of these players now, it's like, ask yourself this. You're going into Monday Night Football, and you need 15 PPR points from this player. Compare the sit starts that you have with this player and that player. Ask yourself, who do you feel more confident will score you 15 PPR points? If I have to ask myself that with Jaylen Warren, it's almost never him. I almost never feel confident with him scoring 15 PPR points on a given week. Of course, it's not black and white. Of course, he's capable of doing it, but more often than not, we just don't see it from him. He gets production in a lot of different ways, just not a lot of high value production, not a lot of high upside production from Jaylen Warren. So I'm going to throw him into the L flex category. On the other side of the ball, we got Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford is definitely back in the mix. Nick Chubb, I have been very vocal about not wanting him in my lineup, and I think this was another example last week where he's now put up like 5 PPR points in 3 straight games. He had the 1 touchdown in the first week that he came back. Pittsburgh's obviously an extremely tough run defense to go against. That being said, I think they're probably going to force, another 15 carries down his fucking gullet in this one. So I'm not gonna put him into the L flex category. I'm gonna put him into surprisingly the dub flex category, because I think this game is gonna need to be won by either side on the ground. He's like a bad version of Najee Harris, to be honest with you. He's not involved in the passing game whatsoever, but I think I like him a little bit more than Jaylen Warren because he's got more touchdown upside. Should be noted that this is an extremely buy-heavy week. You've got the Falcons, which eliminates Bijan Robinson. You got the Bills, James Cook. You've got the Bengals in Chase Brown. You've got the Saints with Alvin Kamara. So that is pretty much 4 RB1s right there out of people's lineups. You have the Jets, Breece Hall. You've got the Jaguars. If you were starting Tank or Travis Etienne, you're already probably in the gutter. But those are 5 extremely high-end running backs on a typical week. So you will need to dip into the flex spot. So I actually think this is a very, very important video for helping you guys make your sit starts. Let's move on to the Sunday slate. We've got Minnesota, 3.5-point favorites on the road against Chicago. 39.5-point total. Minnesota has been one of the stiffest run Ds overall. That being said, DeAndre Swift has just gotten too much work. He is getting it done in all facets. He is scoring touchdowns, a lot of breakaway plays. That being said, I do think Roschon was a lot more involved last week with the new offensive coordinator. So DeAndre Swift does move just in this really tough matchup with Roschon being a little bit more involved. I don't think he's in the must-start category, but he's definitely in the strong start category for me. Roschon would be an L flex play for me. On Minnesota, we've got Aaron Jones, who we did see Cam Akers get more involved last week, but I don't think that's going to be the normal game script. I think they're just probably trying to use him a little bit less for the stretch run. You got an older veteran, Aaron Jones, who typically gets banged up at one point or another during the year. We've already seen it this year, so probably a little bit higher of a re-injury risk, but you're not going to sit Aaron Jones. Chicago's run defense has been really, really poor relative to its pass defense, so it's more of a run funnel defense. So Aaron Jones for me he's actually going to end up in the strong start category as well, just because he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns, but I think on any given week, he is capable of putting up a touchdown at 100 yards from scrimmage. So strong start for me for Aaron Jones. Next game, we've got Tampa Bay, 5.5-point favorites on the road at the New York Giants, 42-point total. There is just a bunch of green across the board here. Neither of these defenses are scary whatsoever. We do have Tommy DeVito under center. For both of these teams, you got the Giants with Tyrone Tracy, he's just going straight into the must-start category for me. Tampa Bay, we've got Bucky and we've got Rachaad White, both of which have been extremely usable in fantasy for the last month of the season. I think they're both strong starts. Both Rachaad White, both Bucky Irving. Bucky's better on the ground. Rachaad White is catching a ton of passes. Both of them are catching passes. Both of them are scoring touchdowns. This is a phenomenal matchup that I'd imagine they try to win through their ground game. Maybe Mike Evans is back. I think it's a 50-50 chance. If that's the case, maybe they lean a little bit more run heavy. But regardless, you could see that with the banged up receiving core here, they are running their offense through their backs here, whether it's the receptions, whether it's the goal line work, whether it's just the in-between the 20s work. The game script is here. The matchup is here. Both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving fall into the very strong start category for me. New England, Miami. New England is on the road in Miami as 7-point underdogs, 46-point total. So they are expecting some points. New England's been an over team since Drake May has taken over under center. I'm not sure where I land on this. I loved the over last week, and we nailed it in our parlay against the Rams. But I think the Miami defense is a little bit better than the Rams defense. As you can see, their EPA per rush rank is 7. Their run D rank per PFF is top 12 as well. So I don't think it's as gimme of a matchup as the Rams side of things. That being said, Ramondre is getting fed, right? Like 20 carries last week. He hasn't been efficient. He's not catching as many passes as I thought he would, but he's still a strong start for me just because of the volume is there. And Miami's defense, while they're stronger, they're not like elite by any means. So Ramondre is going to fall into the strong start category for me. On the flip side of the ball, Devon Achane is absolutely a must start. No one behind him is getting any sort of serious work. As 7-point favorites, one of the other backs could get a goal line carry. More likely than not, that would be Raheem Mostert. Jalen Wright's getting more work than him, but he's getting pretty much fucking useless work where it's like on the 42-yard line, he gets a 6-yard carry. So Jalen Wright for sure is a must-sit. Raheem Mostert I would put into the must-sit category as well. If you want to get cute and put him into the L-flex category because you've got 16, RB1s or something on bye this week, whatever, but I ain't doing it. Tennessee versus Houston. We've got Tennessee on the road as 8.5-point underdogs. 42-point total. Tennessee, I can never really get there's no consistency with Tennessee on what we should expect. A great defensive outing, a strong offensive performance out here. We just don't really know what's ever going to happen on a weekly basis for them. Houston, obviously, Joe Mixon shoots straight up into the must-start category. The dude looks like fucking prime AP out there. It's actually unbelievable how much better he looks in a Houston uniform than he does in a Cincinnati uniform, both physically and an aesthetic standpoint. Mixon looks cool as shit in a Houston Texans uniform, man. Something I never thought I would say about him, but he is one of the most enjoyable players to watch this year in all of the NFL. On the other hand, we've got Tennessee, a little bit of a tricky backfield here. Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears are now splitting touches pretty drastically relative to the way Tony Pollard was getting work early in the season. Tajay Spears left last week's game with a concussion. Now, this is being filmed at 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning, so we don't have any practice reports for the week yet. I want to film these as early as I can because I know a lot of you guys have Thursday night sit starts, etc. So I want to give you my POV at this point. Good chance that Tajay Spears again misses this game. If that's the case, Tony Pollard gets all of the work. Whether it's efficient or not, doesn't really matter because the volume is so high. The Houston defense it felt like it's one that's just been overrated all year. It'll probably, benefit pretty greatly from having a dude like Nico Collins back on the field so the offense has the ball more, they get more rest, etc. It always carries over. But Houston feels like a team that every week everyone's like, oh, the Houston defense is tough, when they're talking about opponents. But they really haven't been that tough on a weekly basis. So they're not a team I'm necessarily scared of. Like, if Tony Pollard is playing without Tajay Spears, he becomes a must start for me. If Tajay Spears is playing, I think that still leaves Tony Pollard in the strong start category because of the volume that he's getting. And I think that's enough for me. He gets the goal line carries, etc. Tajay Spears is a must sit for me until we see like any sort of actual fantasy life from him. Moving down the list, we got KC and we've got Carolina. All right, so KC 11-point favorites, 43-point total. Just if you look at this chart, it is red versus green, just straight up Christmas colors right now. KC, one of the stiffest, if not the toughest run defenses in the NFL, just all that fucking power up front. You got Carolina that's just donating fantasy points to opposing running backs right now. So we got a battle of two completely different sides of the spectrum here. On one end, this is pretty drastically going to come down to Isaiah Pacheco. If Isaiah Pacheco doesn't go, Kareem Hunt obviously shoots up to must-start category. If Isaiah Pacheco plays, I still think Kareem Hunt is an extremely strong start because I don't expect Pacheco to be 100% right away. I don't expect him to get a huge workload right away. Honestly, I hate talking about injuries early in the week because I end up looking stupid most of the time. I'd kind of be surprised if Pacheco even suits up this week. So I'm leaning towards Kareem Hunt just being in the must-start category. If Pacheco does play, he's going to be in the L-flex category for me, while Kareem Hunt lands in the still between the strong and must-start category because I still think he inherits the majority of the workload, and Pacheco's probably not ready to carry anything more than 20 to 25% of the touches. So there's that. On the flip side, we have kind of a similar situation where we have Jonathan Brooks finally, hopefully being active for the first time this year. Talented rookie out of Texas. Second-round pick for them, but Chuba's been so good that he literally got a mid-season fat extension, 4 years, $32 million. So Chuba's been an RB1 all season. The matchup is extremely, extremely tough. If Jonathan Brooks plays, I still like Pacheco. Don't expect him to get a full workload of carries. I expect him to have a couple packages for him. Maybe he'll see a drive. Maybe he'll see 2 drives, but I'm not expecting anything more than 6 to 8 carries in this game. Anything like that, maybe 10 at the maximum, which does eat into Chuba's workload. But at the same time, we've seen Miles Sanders get between 5 and 8 touches a game, and it hasn't taken out of Chuba's workload whatsoever. So I think Brooks probably just steps into Miles Sanders' workload. Although Miles Sanders' injury apparently went from like season-ending, career-ending to day-to-day, so maybe Miles Sanders is active here as well. I'd imagine he doesn't really play at all now that Brooks is back, but Brooks is a must-sit for me in this game. If you've been waiting for him to activate into your lineup, there's no way I get him into my lineup in this first week. Chuba Hubbard remains, because of the volume, because of how efficient he's been, the run blocking unit for Carolina has been massively upgraded. Like, that's the other side of the thing here. It's like Chuba's not just getting the volume being efficient. A lot of it has to do with the supporting cast. While Bryce Young is straight cheeks and they don't produce via the passing game, the run blocking unit for Carolina has been really, really solid. They made a lot of moves this offseason to upgrade the offensive line, and it completely showed out for him. So Chuba, I still think like there's no way you're sitting him here. I'll throw him into the strong start category. Matchup is tough, but he's been good enough. The volume's been good enough where I'm still really, really confident in him. Next up, we got Dallas. We got Washington. Washington 10.5-point favorites at home, 45.5-point total here. Dallas obviously showed a little bit of life statistically in the box score on Monday night against Houston. Cooper Rush went upwards of 300 passing yards. That being said, though, it wasn't good for Rico Dowdle, and I don't know that it's going to get much better in this scenario because there's such heavy underdogs here. They won't have game script. Maybe he'll catch a couple passes. Ultimately, I'm going to put Rico Dowdle in the dub flex category because there are so many players on bye, and he's had minimum 15 opportunities in 3 straight games, and they clearly want him to be the guy in that backfield. It's just in bad matchups where they're getting their fucking asses kicked. It's tough for a dude like him to produce given the circumstances around him. I still think he's very playable just given the volume and the state of the running back position right now. So we'll throw him into there. On the flip side, we had Brian Robinson return, and this is like the nutcase matchup for him right now. Dallas is one of the worst run defenses, if not the worst run defense in the NFL. Joe Mixon is a similar play style to Brian Robinson. He got, a bunch of carries and a bunch of opportunities last week in his first game back from the hamstring injury. Now he's got the 10 days rest to come off of. I think Brian Robinson is probably near 95%. This is a game where I think he can score multiple touchdowns on the ground. They could dominate the game script. He's going to go straight into a must-start category for me. And I think because they should dominate time of possession and just overall snaps and plays, I think Austin Eckler's going to fall into the borderline dub flex strong start category. I'm going to throw him into the dub flex category. I would play Eckler over Rico Dowdle. Let's move down. Detroit and Indianapolis. All right. So we got Detroit, 7.5-point favorites on the road in Indy, 50.5 points total in this one. We saw a rich return, really dominated for the Indianapolis Colts in that comeback against the Jets. Now, the tricky part was JT not producing. However, I think they just sold out to stop the ground game, and Jonathan Taylor, he had like 24 carries for 50, 60 yards. It was an abysmal efficiency game from him. This is a very tough matchup against Detroit. However, Detroit's now dealing with a decent amount of like significant injuries. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson's been out. Alex Anzalone is now out for 6 to 8 weeks, which is, the middle, the beast, the heart of their defense. So that's opening things up for the middle of that linebacker group there. And JT is going to get 20-plus carries. So honestly, I look at this matchup and we don't get cute anywhere. Detroit, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, all immediately up into the must-start category. Let's just move onwards to Denver versus Las Vegas. Denver, 5.5-point favorites on the road in Las Vegas, 41-point total. Both good defenses. Denver, obviously mainstream good. LV, not getting the hype that they probably should be because they end up allowing a lot of points and their offense is so miserable that it makes their defense look bad as well. But if you look at the underlying stats, both of them are top 6 in run defensive rank per PFF. EPA per rush, Denver's number 6 overall. LV drops to 16, but fantasy points per game to the running back position, because they get dominated in game script, they've allowed a lot of points. Now, the tricky part with Denver's backfield is you never know what the fuck you're going to get from Mr. Sean Payton. It was supposed to be an estimate week last week, turned into a Javonte week this week. So at this point, you have to ride Javonte because you're riding the hot hand, I suppose. But I still think based on like how often Sean Payton in this backfield just flip-flops and who gets the carries on the goal line, like randomly Jaleel McLaughlin might get one. I think you could put Javonte, just based on the matchup, into the dub flex category. I think everybody else is a must-sit. On the LV side of things, we are dealing with a couple injuries. We're dealing with injuries to Madison. We're dealing with injuries to Zamir White. We don't know what their status is. Again, we don't have injury reports yet for Wednesday practices. If Zamir White is not playing and Alexander Madison does play, I think based on the volume and the amount of pass catching he's done this year, I think you could sneak him into the dub flex category. If they both play, they're both must-sits for me. If Alexander Madison does not play and Zamir White plays, he's going to be an L flex for me because he does not catch passes. He doesn't do enough on his own that Alexander Madison does, so I'm not playing him. Moving down to San Fran and Green Bay. 2.5-point favorites. Green Bay is at home, 47.5-point total. I actually made a parlay this morning on DraftKings, which you guys can go follow my parlays on Pickett. That is a bet tracking app, all right? The Pickett app is linked down below, one of the first descriptions down there. If you just want to see what I put my money on a weekly basis, you can also sync any sportsbooks that you use and track your bets over a long period of time, let you know how many units you're up, how many units you are down, but it's like a social app, so you can also follow and see what bets I put in before the Sunday games kick off. I took Green Bay minus 2.5 points. When you look at the San Francisco defense, they are super banged up on defense. Nick Bosa with the hip, not looking great. George Kittle, it's possible he misses another week. Brock Purdy's dealing with a shoulder injury. Like, vibes are not great for San Fran. They are very, very below health right now. Their run defense has been bad. Green Bay's run defense hasn't been good either. So you look at C-Mac, and, I mean, you have to put him into the must-start category. He's come back and seen 20-plus touches in both games. On the flip side, Josh Jacobs has been phenomenal as well, especially over the last, 5-6 weeks of the season. He is getting about 20 carries a game. He is, getting very involved in the receiving game as well. He's a dude that's catching 3 to 4 passes a game and being really efficient on those receptions, getting goal line work as well. So I think both of those guys move right into the must-start category. Next game, we've got Arizona. We've got Seattle. Seattle's a 1-point favorite, 47.5-point total in this one as well. This was the second game of the parlay, so I took Green Bay minus 2.5. If you want to know what I took in the Seattle versus Arizona game, you're going to have to follow me on Pickett to see the second leg of that one. Arizona, we've got James Conner, who's looked fantastic, and I'm going to put him into the strong start category because I still don't know what we expect on a week-to-week basis from this Arizona offense. He's like a top 15, top 16 running back for me. Probably should be in the must-start, but doesn't It ain't that deep. When you look at the players behind him, you've got Trey Benson, who's been getting more work as the season's progressed. He's still, to me, an L flex play because a lot of the times he gets involved, it happens to be when Arizona's up big in points. So I don't know that you could trust the volume when the game script is not in favor of them. And Seattle is a 1-point favorite at home there. So I don't know that Arizona gets the game script that we are hoping for. It is a good defensive matchup for both running back sides in this game because you see a lot of green across the board, and neither of them are particularly strong against running backs. When it gets to Seattle, Kenneth Walker, obviously a must start here. So Arizona, Seattle, some good players here. James Conner, Kenneth Walker should be in your lineups. We get to Philly. We get to L.A. Philly, 2.5-point favorites on the road in L.A., 48.5-point total. Two tough run defenses here, actually. Saquon's obviously a must-start there. We won't really talk much about that. On the flip side, you got Kyren, who, of course, I traded for him in Week 8 and then stopped scoring touchdowns. Ultimately, Week 9, 10, 11, has not scored a touchdown since. I thought bringing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back onto the field would be like, okay, the offense is a lot better. We're going to get a lot more goal line opportunities. We're going to get a lot more scoring opportunities. That is the case, except they're all fucking coming from 50 yards out. So it's not getting any goal line opportunities for Kyren. That being said, he's still getting, 15, 20 touches a game, and some of the more goal line, opportunities will come his way. So Kyren's a must start, regardless of the really, really tough matchup. Saquon, obviously, a must start. And we get to the last matchup of the week. We got Baltimore. We've got the LA Chargers. Monday Night Football. Baltimore, 3-point favorites on the road in LA, despite how good the Chargers have looked recently. 49.5-point total here. Crazy, crazy high. Baltimore, fantastic run defense. The Chargers, just fantastic defense overall. Expecting this to be a little bit more heavily weighted towards the air here. That being said, of course, you're starting Derrick Henry. You're not starting anyone else into that backfield. The Chargers, this gets a little bit tricky because we've seen Dobbins play well. We've seen Gus Edwards play, and we've seen Hassan Haskins play on the goal line. Gus Edwards, to me, is for sure an L flex. Maybe we got a little revenge game narrative. Maybe they put him in on the goal line to be like, yo, fuck my former team. Let's get a touchdown on their headpiece right now. Still an L flex play for me. He's just not getting enough volume. He's not getting a ton of goal line carries. He's not making any big plays. He's not catching any passes. So Gus is a L flex for me. Should be rostered. J.K. Dobbins, on the other hand, tough matchup. He has not really played that well recently. He had a couple touchdown scores last week, but they felt a little bit more fluky than they did real. So when I look at the rollout here, a tough matchup, I'm actually going to throw Dobbins into the dub flex category. He has a strong start, kind of, but I think he's more of a dub flex this week because if he doesn't score those 2 touchdowns, like one of his touchdowns last week was 4th down on the goal line. It was like 3 goal line attempts prior to him that were not him that didn't go in. Then he got the touchdown score. And then at the end of the game, when they were kind of icing the clock or trying to just like ice the clock to get to a field goal, he busted off a 30-yard touchdown run. Now, can't really take it away from him. But if those don't happen, you're looking at like a 10 for 40 game without much else going on there. So he's a dub flex, maybe a strong start for me. I don't think there are a lot of teams that could afford to sit J.K. Dobbins, but I do think it's valid to ask the question based on the matchup, based on Gus Edwards being back in the mix here, if J.K. Dobbins can be sat for, if you got like 3-4 top 20 wide receiver options and you're looking for a better PPR play, I think there's a world where, you could lean other players over J.K. Dobbins. So we will wrap up there. I hope y'all enjoyed this style of video a little bit more than no matter what we do. You guys complain. We do the group rankings and you guys say, I hate this. I do them by myself. And you guys say, go back to the group rankings, make it more pictures. You guys just like to fucking complain all the time. And I complain all the time too. So, I'm right there with y'all. All right. It is Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. We're doing a photo shoot for our winter merch drop. We got the Smoochies hoodies. Very high quality right here. Smoochies. We got BDGE tag on the wrist. We've got the classic triple stack hoodie, which will be coming out. Both of these are cream colored hoodies, by the way, not white. So you've got the triple stack, and then you've got the stitch triple stack on like green, I want to say navy or black, and then we've got like a dark green forest green color as well. So we're doing the photo shoot for those hoodies today in a couple hours. They will be live on the site, bdge.shop. I want to say like December 2nd. So if anyone wants some merch, it is very limited in quantity. So you're going to have to get there early, but just make sure you're following me and us on the social medias, and you will get a more clear announcement of the exact date of the drop. But they will sell out quickly. So if you do want some merch from us, those are around the dates, and those are the offerings that we have for y'all. All right? I love you. We'll be back for the wide receiver outlook. Same video, different position tomorrow. Smoochies.